When snow covers the mountains and piercing winds blow, many animals that inhabit the Alps retreat or hibernate. But others, like the Ibex, the Chamois, the snow hare, and the bearded vulture, defy the extreme conditions and remain active even in winter. These creatures have all developed fascinating strategies to cope with the cold, with avalanches, and with the scarcity of food. They are all survival specialists in a hostile environment. The Swiss National Park in the canton of Grisons lies in the far east of the country. It is the oldest and best protected wilderness in the Alps. Visitors can only enter the nature reserve during a 6-month period over the summer, but from November to May, the animals here must not be disturbed by humans. During the long winter, only park rangers and a few researchers are allowed to be out and about in this mountain landscape. They provide us with a unique insight into a world which otherwise is solely the preserve of wild animals. Dominic Godley has worked in the Swiss National Park for 23 years. Hardly anyone knows the 170 square kilometre reserve as well as he does. His patrol today has brought him to the Val Trubschun, which contains a rich variety of animals. The region is home to the king of the Alps, the Ibex. Around 100 years ago, after the species had been wiped out in Switzerland, it was reintroduced here in the national park. Today, the park is the habitat of around 300 of these mountain specialists. With steep rocky slopes up to an altitude of 3,200 meters, the park offers ideal living conditions for the Ibex. Apart from the occasional check on them by the park rangers, the animals are undisturbed all winter long. Although ibexes live in high alpine regions, whenever possible they avoid the snow.
The ibex wasn't exactly created for deep snow. It has very short legs, so it's quite distinct from the chamois, which also has a different build. In winter, the ibex looks for slopes where the snow has melted. There it can move around better and doesn't have to dig so much.
Time and again, the ibexes come across what are known as fish mouths, small gaps in the snow beneath which avalanches are often released.
In mid-January, a fish mouth opened and the entire slope slid down. You can see that quite clearly. The ibexes, of course, were happy. It meant they had food all winter long. The slopes face southeast. In the east especially, the ibexes warm up in the early morning sun. That's a special character of the species. Sometimes you can even watch them at it all day long. They don't move an inch. They just let themselves be warmed by the sun. They conserve all their energy, which is important for their survival.
Ibexes are masters at conserving energy. In winter, they go for months, living off the fat reserves they have built up in summer on the mountain meadows of the Val Trubschun and its side valleys. Chamois also spend the winter at higher altitudes.
Chamois are also very special creatures. Their black winter coat actually attracts heat and sees them through the cold time of the year. Their coat is also very thick in winter. And there's another advantage they have over the ibex. Between the two sections of each cloven hoof, they have a broad band which enables them to spread the hoof to form a small snowshoe. It enables them to cover loose snow very easily. You could see that this year too. Although the snow was really deep, they were able to move around in it particularly well.
But at temperatures of up to 30 below, even chamois have to conserve their strength.
They can conserve energy. We're now studying how this happens in the animal's body. It's also a kind of artificial hibernation. Ibexes can also reduce the temperature in their extremities and also lower it by a few degrees in the thorax. In this way, the animals save a vast amount of energy.
Several years ago, researchers at Vienna University also studied the ability of cloven-hoofed animals in the wild to lower their body temperature in winter and thus their metabolic rate. In particularly cold nights, the temperature in the extremities and outer parts of the body can drop by up to 15 degrees. But then it is impossible for an ibex to flee because its legs are numb. That is why these creatures only allow themselves to lapse into this state of torpor when they feel safe. This phenomenon is now being studied more closely on chamois in the Swiss National Park, because nowhere else do alpine animals live as free from human influence as here. Park ranger Claudio Iniger and his scientific assistant, Pia Anderwald, have fitted a female chamois with a transmitter.
I've now got a good signal. I noticed that this direction is the best, probably because there's no obstacle in the 500 meters or so between me and the animal. The distance might even be greater, but the signal is very good. From here I can actually establish a link and download the data.
The chamois has a probe in her body which constantly transmits information.
Here we have a stomach probe, which is introduced orally as the animal is coming round from anesthetic. In other words, when the swallow reflex is present again. The probe is now located in the animal's reticulum, where it measures stomach temperature and vibrations. When the animal is at rest, the vibrations correspond to its heart rate.
As similar studies on ibexes and red deer in Austria have shown, the animal doesn't feel the probe. In those areas where the research took place, there were wolves or hunters present, but here in the national park, the hoofed animals are safe.
The hypothesis is that animals which are left in peace and are aware of that, knowing that they have nothing to fear from large predators or hunters, can afford to lower their body temperature and heart rate. In fact, they are likely to lower them even further than they would in regions where they'd expect to be disturbed, and would thus always have to be ready to flee.
If they had to flee in deep snow, they'd have to consume a lot of energy. And that, of course, could prove fatal. That's why peace and calm in winter is so important for these animals.
The research project is still in its infancy. The plan is to equip more chamois with the probe. Only then will it be possible to draw reliable conclusions as to the species' way of life.
If our hypothesis really is accurate, and chamois can conserve more energy if they are left in peace, that would make it the most important criterion for the survival of hoofed animals in winter. It would also mean that, wherever these creatures are found, special areas ought to be set up where they would not expect to be disturbed by human activity.
But it is not only humans who pose a threat to animals. In the near future, it is planned to reintroduce wolves into the national park. These predators have already been sighted several times. Further studies will show what influence their presence has on the behavior of ibexes, chamois and co. It is not only hooved animals that have adapted to the extreme conditions in the mountains. Other wild species have developed their own survival strategies, like the snow hare, for instance. Biologist Mike Rainus is on the trail of a snow hare. He has been studying the behavior of these timid creatures for many years.
This diagonal bite mark is typical. It can only have been made by a hare. It's relatively high up on the tree, so the tree was probably a bit lower when the hare came by. In all likelihood, it was weighed down by snow. That was a few days ago. The tree has already exuded resin on the area bitten by the hare.
Snow hares like to eat grasses, herbs and berries, but in winter they have to make do with far less appealing food.
These are needles from a mountain pine. As food, they are a very poor source of energy. So in order to utilize this low-energy food source, the snow hare has developed a different strategy from other ruminants. It eats its own feces in order to absorb nutrition from the bolus. When that has been utilized, in really hard times, for instance when lots of snow has fallen, the snow hare can sometimes again eat even hard, pellet-like droppings, like these, a second time.
Every year, Mike Rainus takes stock of the snow hare population in the national park. Since he rarely comes across the animals themselves, he mainly searches for their droppings.
This is from a snow hare. It's really fresh. From yesterday, perhaps. I walked through here and it followed me, in the night, it seems, and left behind its excrement, or scat. Hares like to use these harder areas to stop themselves sinking in.
The scat will be analysed in the laboratory because it is full of information for the researcher.
I'm over the moon about this scat because it's evidence of the snow hare's presence, and it will provide information on its food, stress hormones and genetic makeup. Obtaining all that information without actually catching the animal is fascinating. It means we can discover new findings, especially about species that lead such a secretive existence.
It is not only the fresh excrement that indicates the presence of a snow hare in this part of the forest.
These are really fresh tracks. You can pick out the snow hare's claws and the direction it took. You can clearly see the hind legs parallel to each other. There is at least one snow hare near here. It's typical for a snow hare that was probably in a hiding place lower down here to flee up towards the mountain. They do that regularly.
Mike Rainus knows a few of their hiding places.
We have to walk slowly now. You'll occasionally find one here. Look, there he is.
With its white fur, the hare is perfectly camouflaged.
It's a really good daytime hiding place for it. It's sitting protected by the branches. And it has a good view of the open areas. If a fox, for example, approaches, the hare can spot it in good time and flee to the rear. It will spend all day sitting there because the snow hare, too, can lower his metabolic rate. It will only get really active at dusk and at night.
During the day, the snow hare hides from its predators, golden eagles, foxes, and eagle owls. The hairs of its winter coat are filled with air for insulation and protect it from the cold. Then the hare takes to its heels.
The snow hare flees silently because its paws are covered with hair and can be splayed. This also enables it to escape much faster from its enemies on the ground.
The snow hare has developed a sophisticated method of escaping from its pursuers in deep snow.
Here we have something special, 2 hare tracks with one older than the other. The hare, making the fresh track, runs slightly behind the older track. It then runs back a bit before leaping out of the track. Here almost 2 meters at an angle of 90 degrees. The predator, following the hare's trail, is totally confused and has no idea where it is. This also applies to hunters when they are trying to track down a hare.
For the time being, the snow hare only has to fear its predators. But as the Earth's climate gets warmer, it will have to move into higher and cooler regions. Mike Rainus warns that the snow hare's habitat could shrink enormously by the end of the century. It is not only the snow hare that threatens to become a victim of global warming. Other alpine creatures are also endangered by climate change, like the snow grouse or ptarmigan. In winter, it leads a Spartan existence and scratches up dried grass or bilberry twigs from under the snow. The bird owes its survival in this winter landscape to its special gizzard, which is filled with small stones. Food that is hard to digest is crushed just like in a pestle. When snow falls, the ptarmigan excavates a cozy snow cave. It is warmer in a snow cave than outside in the cold wind. The bird's white plumage is superb camouflage. If the climate gets warmer and the snows melt, its white feathers will make the snow grouse easy prey. That is why snow grouse are already moving up to higher altitudes in the Swiss Alps. Climate change is having a more powerful impact in the mountains than on a global average. Scientists fear a substantial increase in extreme weather situations. The long winter in the Alps is already a challenge for all animals. No matter how well they have adapted to the harsh climate, they retreat into their safe areas, which offer a little protection from the weather and also some food. But the cold and the snow still claim victims. Animals freeze or starve to death, or they slip and plummet into the depths. Some animals lose their lives in huge avalanches, which strip the snow right down to the grass cover. Animals killed in this way are a welcome meal for scavengers. On his patrols, Park Ranger Dominic Godley comes across animal carcasses time and again, or what is left of them.
We saw quite clearly that a fish mouth had been created. That's a gap which opens up in the middle of a snow slab. In the middle of winter, these are the only places where wild animals, especially ibexes and chamois, find food. 2 or 3 ibexes had been in the fish mouth and were swept away by the snow. I reckon that 1 or 2 could still be buried. They will have been crushed by the tons and tons of snow. This was a real avalanche accident, something that happens time and again in nature.
Excrement, or scat, provides a clue as to which scavenger feasted on the carcass.
It was a fox. There's one big difference between wolves and foxes. Scat from a wolf has such a strong smell, it's unmistakable. There's no doubt that a fox was here. It's eaten everything. This was a buck. We took the trophy with us about 2 weeks ago when the animal was still completely whole. But all that's left now are a few hares. But one creature's death means survival for others. Raptors, foxes and other scavengers profit in abundance from a severe winter like the last one.
Even the ibex's bones have virtually all disappeared. This indicates a specific type of scavenger.
When there are no bones left, it's a sign that a bearded vulture was here.
Europe's biggest raptor, with a wingspan of nearly 3 meters, the bearded vulture lives entirely off carrion and bones. Its claws are not designed for catching prey. Bearded vultures have adapted to winter conditions in a very special way. Their offspring are born in the middle of the coldest time of the year.
The bearded vulture's strategy is to brood its eggs early. Older, experienced pairs that have been together for quite a while start brooding around the 20th to the 25th of December. The young hatch out about 55 days later, at just the right time for the parents to find animals killed by disease, hunger or cold.
Ideal conditions for rearing young bearded vultures. The chicks are fed meat as soon as they are born. But soon their diet too consists mainly of bones.
We know that the acid in their stomachs is very strong. I always imagine that if you dipped your hand into it, you might lose a finger or 2. Their gastric acid really is incredible. It can dissolve bone. As we know, bone contains lots of minerals and other things. So the birds can survive well on a diet of bones. We're talking about a niche in nature which other animals in the wild can't use.
An uninvited guest has approached the chick in the nest while its parents are away in search of food. But the youngster is able to cope with the intruder on its own.
It's already the size of a chicken, so it's not at risk if left on its own. When it's very young, though, other raptors can pose a threat, especially ravens. You very rarely hear of that happening, but it can't be ruled out.
Mum's back, Now the chick really is safe. It's not only wild animals that have developed strategies for surviving in harsh winters. Some domestic animals also have natural defenses against snow and cold. On the perimeter of the Swiss National Park, a sleigh ride is undoubtedly the most pleasant way of enjoying the winter landscape. The driver is Grisson's farmer, Men Yuan, known to the locals as the Engadine horseman. Yuan runs the San Yon horse farm. It's located some 1,500 meters above the village of Skuol. The 80 or so horses live outside all year round. They are given fresh hay twice a day, as well as concentrated feed, so they can maintain their body temperature in the cold, because even though the temperature at night can drop to 30 below, they stay out in the open all the time.
Nature has given these animals a wonderful winter coat. They are well protected and can adapt so well that the cold is no problem. Look how thick Chopin's coat is. I can do this for quite a while, and it's still thick. He has an undercoat. And when you think that the temperature on the outside of his coat is perhaps minus 20, and 1.5 centimeters further in, on his skin it's around 37 plus, you get an idea of just how effective this natural insulation is.
Most of the horses here are robust Freiburgers, the last original Swiss breed. But according to Men Yuan, all healthy horses are hardy.
We once had 2 horses from Spain, which only came to us in autumn. So in late October or November, our horses had already grown some of their winter coat. The Spanish horses, of course, hadn't, and for a while they had a bit of a problem with the transition. Well, that was only in the first few months. After that, they were fine, which just goes to show once again how adaptable these creatures are.
The horses are in action all winter long. They are also ridden out into the mountain world of the Engadine. These trekking tours can take the horses and their riders up to an altitude of 2,500 meters. And according to their owners, the horses still feel comfortable, even in alpine regions like this. The farrier pays regular visits to San Yon. In winter, the horses use most of their energy reserves for maintaining their body temperature, so their hooves grow more slowly. In winter, roughly every 2 months, the horses are fitted with new shoes that have special studs and metal pins. These horse spikes provide grip on snow and ice and reduce the danger of a fall. In this way, the horses get through the winter even if it is bitterly cold. The horseman of the Engadine's concept of keeping his animals outside all winter long has stood the test.
We are convinced that nature has given horses the best prerequisites for defying really low temperatures. All we do is simply help a little as best we can.
It is not only animals that have adapted to the extreme conditions in winter. Some trees and plants are also skilled alpine survivors. In the mountains, the tree line is between 1,800 and 2,200 meters above sea level. Only the queen of the Alps, the Swiss stone pine or Arola pine, grows at a higher altitude. Felix Gugeli, from the Swiss Federal Institute for Forest, Snow and Landscape Research, is fascinated by these trees, some of which are 800 years old. Unlike larches, which grow just below the tree line, Swiss stone pines keep their green needles in winter. These needles contain the secret of how the Swiss stone pine is able to defy wind and weather on the uppermost edge of the tree line.
In my eyes, the Swiss stone pine is a true survivor. At this altitude, most trees would perish. One reason for its survival is most certainly the frost protection that the Swiss stone pine stores in its needles. They contain sugar molecules which lower the freezing point of water. So the Swiss stone pine can keep its fluids liquid even at temperatures of minus 40 degrees. So the fluid in the needles never freezes, and this enables the species to survive even in bitterly cold conditions.
Dadurch ist es möglich, auch bei eisiger Kälte zu überleben.
But in order to survive, the Swiss stone pine needs a helper, the nutcracker, the heraldic animal of the Swiss National Park. The seeds of the Swiss stone pine are this little raven's favourite winter food.
This is a really nice pine cone. It still has its original shape. The nutcracker got it down from the tree and then packed out the seeds on this side. You can see the seeds in the cone scales. The nutcracker gets them out with its long, hard beak and then either eats them or stores them in its throat pouch and then hides them somewhere.
Frisst sie entweder oder nimmt sie in seinen Kehlsack rein und geht sie verstecken.
The skillful nutcracker has developed a sophisticated method of getting at the seeds more easily.
This is a really good example of a stone pine smithy. A nutcracker has carried a cone here and wedged it securely so that it doesn't move when it packs out the seeds. Judging by the number of seed coats, it looks like the bid has eaten a few. It will have put the rest in its throat pouch, probably a handful or so, which is quite a lot, and then gone off to hide them. With its long beak, the nutcracker makes a hole in the ground. Regurgitate a few seeds and seals the hole. The seeds are then preserved all winter.
In this way, the busy bird can establish up to 20,000 food stores in autumn, and it will find most of the hiding places again in winter, even if they are covered by a thick layer of snow. But some of the seed depots remain undiscovered.
This is a group of young or half-grown Swiss stone pines. You can see that here 3 trunks are growing more or less from one point. This indicates that a nutcracker established a seed store here which, for whatever reason, wasn't used. So the seeds were able to germinate and grow. As a result, we've got several stone pines growing up as a bunch.
The Swiss stone pine and the nutcracker, a win-win situation in nature.
It's interplay. The nutcracker benefits from the nutrient-rich seeds, which guarantee its winter stores, and the tree itself is disseminated. It grows in places its heavy seeds would otherwise never have reached. This will also help the tree when global warming makes it necessary to ascend to higher altitudes. If it weren't for the nutcracker, the stone pine's heavy seeds could never be transported to higher locations.
But the Swiss stone pine grows slowly, too slowly, Felix Gugeli fears. In the long run, it too could lose the race against rapid climate change. We're back in Val Trubschun. Dominic Godley and Claudio Eniger are taking their lunch break. Time and again, their gaze wanders up to the southern slope of the valley.
I think the Ibex looked down and saw the others had moved on.
The park rangers are waiting for an Ibex to get caught in their trap.
Isn't it still on the flank near the tree stump? No, it's not.
Salt has been put in the cage as a lure.
We've still got our eyes peeled even in our lunch break. You can see that the doe, the female, is coming down. I reckon we'll have to end our lunch break in about 5 minutes and head up to the trap. It's probably working.
Geht's wieder hoch zur Falle. Also ich denke, das sollte funktionieren.
The trap operation is part of a research project in the national park. The aim is to determine at what age the bucks are capable of reproduction.
We are trying to capture as many bucks and does and kids as possible. The more we catch, the easier it is to determine which animals are related. We don't know for certain whether these really are only 11 or 12-year-old bucks, whether they are even older, or maybe only 6, 7 or 8 years old. We want to know what age is relevant for reproduction.
Then the trap snaps shut. This buck is about 10 years old. It's in rather a weak state, which isn't surprising, considering how severe the winter has been. The park rangers are also trained to catch animals. They measure the buck and take blood samples. A DNA analysis will show which of the ibexes in the valley it is related to. After a few minutes, the animal is released.
I'm certain that in 2 or 3 days' time we'll find it in our trap once again. The trap doesn't seem to bother the ibexes, otherwise they would remember and avoid it, which shows that this is not at all stressful for wild animals.
Established over a century ago, this nature reserve in eastern Switzerland is the oldest national park in the Alps. Right from the start, one of its main aims has been to facilitate research into the fauna of the region. This includes making a regular count of the various populations. Consequently, 4 times a year, Dominic Godley and his colleagues head for predetermined locations in the park and record the number of animals. In this way, over the years, valuable data series have been obtained, which also help researchers to understand more about the behaviour and way of life of alpine animals. The park rangers are in constant radio contact with one another. They converse in Romansh, the language of this part of Switzerland.
Ok, allora quels non è più da pigliar su. Allora intanto fini, grazie.
There are 5 of us who compile records in this region. We each have our own sector. And when we see a certain species moving from one sector to another, we get in touch by radio to avoid any double counting. We have to be very accurate.
In contrast to other nature reserves, animals here are left to their own devices. Even in particularly severe winters, the animals are not fed, nor are avalanches triggered artificially. Here, humans are solely observers.
We want to observe precisely what nature does with our animals. That is actually what our forefathers wanted from the park right from the start. To see how this piece of nature functions without human intervention of any kind, and to learn the processes involved.
The annual counts carried out by the park rangers show that in the Swiss National Park, nature regulates herself quite independently.
We've now had 3 severe winters in succession. The first winter saw the end of most of the animals that were weak or sick or very old. This third winter has been just as harsh as the first. But the selection process in that first winter was so rigorous that this year we've lost very few game to sickness or other causes. In other words, the animals that were weak and old have died off. Now we have a stronger population and the death rate is far lower.
Nevertheless, here too, nature is in danger of becoming unbalanced. In Ibexes, rutting and birth adhere to annual cycles. Through the rise in global temperatures, these could shift permanently.
Naturally, if the summers get drier and drier, kids will be born at the wrong time of the year, when, for instance, the does are no longer producing milk of the same good quality, and that could have a major impact on populations.
The animals seem to have survived this last harsh winter very well. But Dominic Godley and his colleagues were not able to count the population of the biggest hooved inhabitants of the Alps, because red deer spend only the summer in the national park. In winter, they frequent forests in lower-lying regions. In the cold period of the year, they too are in energy-saving mode. They reduce their metabolic rate and eat only half as much as in summer. In spring, when the snows melt in the valley, the red deer leave the forests and wander onto the fields and meadows to graze. There they can be counted easily, best of all at night when the animals feel undisturbed. Just how well the red deer population has developed and how well the animals have made it through the long winter is something gamekeeper Guolf Denot and 3 of his colleagues hope to answer during the night. Using spotlights, they sweep the area around Zenets on the edge of the national park. The focus is primarily on red deer, but all other wild animals are recorded as well. Last spring, Guolf Denot registered around 700 red deer in the reserve. He doubts that there will be as many this year.
We've just had a severe winter. And if the large amount of snow that has fallen doesn't melt, because it's still relatively cold during the daytime, life for the animals will be far from easy. Sitting in the warmth at home, you feel sorry for the red deer, knowing that they have to survive outdoors in winter in the bitter cold, in deep snow, and finding so little food that they have to burn their fat reserves in order to survive. That makes you sad, and you feel genuine sympathy for them.
No matter how harsh the winter might be, even on the periphery of the national park, the animals can expect no help from human hand.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 5.
We don't feed the red deer. They have to find a winter retreat on their own. But that makes for better distribution. Fewer deer are crowded together. And the intra-specific competition for food is also spread out much better.
Every year, the game wardens drive the same route at the same time. In this way, they can compare what they have counted. In addition to spotlights, they also use thermal imaging equipment.
Quantos deram em mim? 23. 23 Hirsch.
Despite what the game wardens feared, roughly as many red deer have been sighted during the night as 12 months ago.
It's really great to see that lots of red deer have survived the winter. But the winter death rate is important. We need it. We need natural selection. So we simply have to accept the death rate in winter.
Over the next few months, the red deer will have to build up their fat reserves as much as possible if they are also to survive the next winter. At daybreak, Dominic Godley is already out and about again. Even in spring, the landscape here is still covered by a deep layer of snow. The first hibernating animals are now leaving their winter quarters.
Those marmots out in the middle of the snow have a real problem. They've come out of hibernation and now have to roam quite some way to find food. But somewhere out there, a golden eagle will be watching. When they've gone a fair distance from the safety of their burrow, it will move in for the kill.
But these cute rodents have virtually no choice. They haven't eaten for months, so their hunger is greater than their fear of an eagle.
It's almost impossible for us humans to imagine. But in the middle of September, they go into a deep sleep. Their body temperature drops to just a few degrees, basically to ground temperature. Then, every 2 weeks they wake up. The bigger animals then warm up the youngsters, and in doing so get blood circulating through their own organs. Then, after 36 hours, they slip back into a deep sleep. This happens about 13 or 14 times throughout the winter.
Verfallen sie wieder in Tiefschlaf. Und so geht das 13, 14 Mal nacheinander.
The marmots end their hibernation in early April. Then they want to get out of their burrows as fast as possible.
This winter especially, they find they are under a huge layer of snow that's about 1 meter 20 or 30 thick and as hard as ice. After 7 months of not having eaten or drunk anything, they first have to dig their way out. And when they manage that, this is what they find.
When danger threatens, the marmot emits a warning cry. The whole family just about manages to reach safety in time. Each animal species in the Alps has developed its own strategy for coping with the snow and the cold. The example of the Swiss National Park shows that the less humans interfere with nature, the greater the chances wild animals have of surviving the winter.
These zones for wild animals from which humans are barred are so valuable. Our experience with them has been hugely positive. We see more and more how important it is for animals not to be disturbed in winter.